Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this case, I wanted to talk about a topic that is kind of common among the survival community, which is where should I be if there's an event? Where should I be before the economy collapses? Should I be in the country? Should I be in the city? And there's very strong opinions formed in both directions. Usually, the idea is that cities will go up in flames and they'll be completely destroyed, and everyone will be fleeing from the cities because they're gonna be these hellholes where everyone suffers and dies miserably, and so on and so forth. It's actually kind of different in reality, and things aren't quite that simple as it usually happens. There's usually a simplistic view of things, black and white, as if it happens in this way or in this other way, and cities are bad, country is good, and if you're away from the city, you're away from people, and therefore you're safe, and that's the end of it. Actually, it's quite much more complicated than that, and the reason I'm doing this video and also made a blog post about the same topic in themodernsurvivalist.com is that a friend of mine who is a very bright person, very smart guy. He does well with his business. He's a survivalist himself. He's very well prepared, and he can handle himself in most situations where 99.9% of the people would just not know what to do. He's very capable of doing lots of things. He's a pretty smart guy. Also a good shooter. He's a hunter as well. He's hunted through the entire country and other countries as well. He knows what he's doing, and he's not someone that would be considered a sheeply by any means. Okay, he has a farm here in Buenos Aires, and recently he suffered an attack. He wasn't at the place when this happened because he lives in some other location. The point is that his homestead with lots of his gear, his supplies, it's also a farm, a productive farm that has the animals and crops you would come to expect from it. There's always employees. He has people living there permanently, keeping an eye on things, and they've done well so far, but as it usually happens, you sometimes just run out of luck. So he got attacked. The place got attacked by 5 armed men wearing ski masks, very professional, communicating with radios. There might have been more people around. They probably made their research well. They probably studied the place before making their move for some time. I don't think it was just a coincidence that he wasn't there when this happened. So it's not really that hard to keep an eye on a place, do some intelligence work, see when someone is leaving or not, and the kind of movement you come to expect in one of these places. It's usually quite simple. You wait for your opportunity. You take a couple of people hostage, which is what they did. They first moved to the furthest away house where the housekeepers lived. So they took that family hostage, then moved to the main building and so on. And they basically took lots of his stuff. And these are the things that happen in some of the rural locations here in Argentina. And it's kind of a contradiction with some of the standard that some people keep in USA, that if you're in the farm, you're safe. If you're in the city, you're not. Truth is that in a farmstead, if you got there with a vehicle, so can anyone else. You're also isolated and you're more exposed. So it's really not that simple. I understand that, for example, when Katrina happened, it happened in a city, right? People had to evacuate, and you will hear the comment, look what happened in Katrina, look what happened with these guys in a city, look what happens in a city when disaster strikes. That's a very specific situation. You're talking about a flood that destroyed a city. Of course there's going to be chaos in such city. what happened in Japan as well. It didn't matter if you were on farmland or if you were in one of the cities. The water just came and destroyed everything, and it happened. It may have happened in a city or in any other place. In Japan, during the footage of the tsunami, you could see the water just going inside the land, just sweeping everything. There were farmland, there were homesteads, there were farms as well. Everything got destroyed equally by the power of nature. So it might be a forest fire, earthquakes, all these things happen, and they happen in different degrees. Of course, if you're talking about an earthquake, you have to keep in mind that in a city you have larger buildings and such, so you're more exposed to other risks as well. In a wildfire, if depending on the land you're in, the kind of vegetation you have, it might be more dangerous than in a city. If you're talking about different situations, factors vary from one place to another. What I did here was have a small list of pro and cons of living in one place or another. So I'd like to go through a few of them and use them as discussion points. Healthier lifestyle. In my opinion, this is the greatest advantage you have from living in a farm, in a homestead, out in the nature. I've mentioned before in previous videos that one of the things that kills most people during an economic collapse is the stress. The uncertainty of not knowing what's going to be happening next month, next week in terms of your finances, if inflation is going to be destroying your salary. The stress is the quiet killer of an economic collapse. It's not dramatic, you're not getting shot, you're not starving to death on the street, but it's just affecting your health just as well, and it's destroying you just the same. So it's one of the greatest causes of death. Stress, heart illnesses, heart attacks. After the economic collapse, people suffer that way, and this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest advantages of being in a place where you're in contact with nature, a more calm, quiet lifestyle. That's one of the things I see going for it. More space for your projects, gardening and raising livestock. If that's an activity you enjoy, if that's something you're into, by all means you will have more fresh food products. You will be able to have your own livestock, your own kitchen coop, a chicken coop. You will have several more alternatives than living in the city or in the suburbs, where you will have less land for your projects and such. So that's an advantage as well. Less likely to suffer opportunistic theft and vandalism incidents. If you're careful in the suburbs as well, and if you make sure you're a bit more careful than the guy next to you, this isn't as much of a problem. But it is true that when there's less people, there's less of these problems. You also keep in mind pickpocketers on the streets, purse snatchers, all this sort of stuff. Of course, if you're living in the country, in the sticks, it's not going to be an issue for you. Now, if you're working in the city as well and you're having your daily activities in a city, then you would be exposed to these risks as well. Having your own firearm shooting range in your backyard, that's a great advantage, in my opinion. At least for me it would be. It's fun, it's a good way of doing training and such. Even though for real training you need to be comparing yourself and competing and leveling yourself against others so as to know where you're standing. If you're alone in your backyard shooting range, and you have your poppers there, and you time yourself and such, it's a way of training. But it's even better if you compete against others and see how others are doing in the same scenarios and such. So it also adds an extra stress factor, having the timer running and such, having people watching you, how you do and such. All of those little extra things add a bit more of stress, and you want that extra stress so as to be more prepared for the real thing. Pandemic scenario, if you're talking about flu, the A flu, the avian flu, or the swine flu, whatever it is you're worried about, less contact with people, that means you're gonna be doing better than the guy on the city that is in contact with hundreds of people per day, maybe. Of course, if you live in the suburbs and you manage to bug in, you're not in contact with others. But what I always mention is that these things, there's not a one incident where shit hit the fan is declared, but it's all these things happen during your daily life. So I think of it in terms of daily activity, daily living, and not post or pre shit hit the fan incident, but general lifestyle. Okay, if there's a swine flu pandemic, if there's a strong flu or some other virus that it's causing problems, you're just gonna be going through your life as well, unless it's some national emergency declared and no one leaves his house, which it's just impossible to do in most cases. People just have to keep doing whatever it is they do, because if not, things just freeze and it's even worse. So you may be able to stay for a couple of weeks or so. Maybe classes are suspended like they were here when the A flu was a bit of a problem back then. But other than that, you're in contact with people. Of course, if you're in a farm, in a retreat, you're not having that much of a problem with that. Let's see some of the disadvantages of being in a rural location, in a homestead, far away from other people, and not having your neighbors nearby. Less jobs. That's something that it's just what it is. If you're in an isolated location, if you're just 15, 20, 30 minutes away from even a small town, you know how they sometimes talk about you have to live a gas tank away from civilization so as to have the hardcore survival thing going on. How would you do anything being a gas tank away from everything? I think it's just stupid, if you don't mind me saying so. It's ridiculous to be a gas tank away from help, a gas tank away from everything. It really makes no sense for me. But coming down to earth and being real about all this, you have to think about how you're gonna be making a living. Having jobs for most people is just the way it is. So are there even job opportunities in this place that you're planning to relocate to, or is it just being sold to you as a fantasy? In many cases, it's being sold as an ideal solution for a non-existing problem. Or if that problem ever actually happens, will this be the solution you were looking for? We're gonna be talking about that a bit later. So being real and keeping your feet on the ground and being down on earth and all, how many jobs do you have in this location? Unless you have a job on your own, if you have your own job, you maybe work from home, your location will be important. If you're self-employed and you manage to have a job that doesn't require you meeting with people and being in contact with others in a frequent basis, then it's more viable to do this, to have to be in a homestead on your own, far away from everyone. Let's keep looking. Greater distances from hospitals. You're further away from schools as well. So the first one, greater distances from hospitals. Again, that's one of the typical things that happens to you. You have an incident, you have an accident, you need medical assistance, you're a gas tank away from everything, you're not going to be making it, okay? If you need immediate if you need immediate medical assistance and you're a gas tank away from everything, you're pretty much going to be dead. If you need immediate health medical assistance and you're 20-30 minutes away from everything, the chances of you surviving decrease the farther away you are, and that makes lots of sense for me, so it should make it for you as well. It's pretty much common sense to understand that the further away you are from medical assistance, the less your chances are of surviving. And this becomes of greater importance as you grow older. As you grow older, the chances of suffering a heart attack, of suffering an accident, or needing medical assistance right away increase. And one of the reasons why people live so long today in comparison to 20, 30 years ago is because of modern medicine. In spite of everything wrong with it, it's the reason why people live to 80, 90 years of age. That's because of modern medical advances, right? Your distance from schools. If you have kids, this is a big issue. I do have kids, and that's something I would consider as well. How far am I from schools? Some people prefer to homeschool. That's all good and well, but not everyone is capable of doing so, especially if you're talking about real economic crisis, real depression, or something equivalent, an economic collapse, even worse. You will have to have a job, and so will your wife as well. So it's gonna be both of you working. What happens here in Argentina is that mostly they end up hiring either a nanny, or if they cannot afford one, they see about a family member that can stay, maybe a grandparent that can stay looking over the kids, so that both of them can go and have a job and have an income both. Because as inflation gets worse, you need more money to buy things, so it makes sense. You need more income, and you cannot afford to have your wife staying in your house with your kids and homeschooling them. There's also something that, well, that's more of a personal point of view. I don't think in many cases that you're gonna be offering much better education level than you're getting from 4 or 5 teachers that are doing that for a living and are professionals at what they do. I do get it that there is a brainwashing thing going on in public schools, but I think you can handle that with a bit of education of your own and at your house, having the conversations with your kids that are required, explaining them how things work, and basically spending time with your kids, talking to them, explaining to them that what is good for everyone, it may not be the best for them in that particular case. So the independent thinking that you want your kids to have, you can still pass it over to your kids without having to go to a homeschool scenario. Okay, you can send your kids to just regular schools and have them being smart kids as well. In a pandemic scenario, now if we're talking about something that spreads through mosquitoes, through rats, all those things will be affecting you more if you are in a rural location than if you are in a city. We had the problem. We usually have it with mosquitoes, with mosquitoes that spread dengue disease. What happens is that the government concentrates most of its effort and plague control in the cities and the locations where there's most people, and you are much more likely to catch these diseases when in rural locations where pest control isn't nearly as good because of an obvious cost involved in it. Long commuting, gas prices is, if you're going to be living 20-30 minutes away from everything and you have to go to a job that's in a city, you're talking about 1 hour commuting time, maybe a couple of hours commuting time, 1 hour on either way. It's I think it's something that it's not something I would be looking forward to, having to spend a couple of hours every day on the road because I choose to live far away from town. And there's also the problem of the gas prices. As gas prices keep going up, it eventually may come to a point where you can no longer afford to live so far away from everything. So that's another thing to keep in mind, under consideration. Finally, what happened to my friend, isolation and crime. You're protecting yourself from certain types of crime by not being in the city, but you're being exposed to others that are just as bad or maybe even worse. So while you're protecting yourself from some criminal incidents where they're mostly based on opportunistic situations, you're being exposed to the ones that are better planned, like the one my friend went through, the one where they're specifically targeting you. They have all the time in the world to do whatever it is they want, and we usually see that in Argentina, that the home invasions in farms and homesteads and places that are more isolated, they tend to be much more violent, more thorough than the ones in the cities, where they hurry a bit more, worried that someone saw them going in or out, or maybe they're getting caught by some camera. There's a bit more of pressure being placed on the criminals, that it just disappears in an isolated location. So basically that's it, guys. I wanted to cover this a bit more, especially so that you make an informed decision and you're not getting tricked into doing something that it's not convenient for you. I've seen online people promoting guys in USA moving to South American countries, to Central American countries as the best thing to do in an economic collapse. Truth is that these guys are just selling real estate in such countries for inflated prices to people that are just worried about the current situation, and they fall for this. Same thing for people within USA trying to sell you real estate locations, real estate in locations that aren't that convenient actually for you. They are just looking at some of the advantages and forgetting about mentioning these ones, the disadvantages, and they're maybe not as well informed as they should be about this factor. Selling homesteads and retreats as a solution for crime within USA, it's just terribly stupid, because if there ever is a complete meltdown, if you ever go through a complete economic collapse, I can guarantee you that you will be suffering this a lot. You're in your homestead in Iowa, Colorado, Idaho, wherever it is you're planning on going, and you're thinking you're protecting yourself from someone dropping by in a vehicle and planning a strike on you. You're really fooling yourself. So I suggest looking at real historic events. What happened in Argentina here, it's real. What happened in South Africa with the white farmers being targeted and 3,000 of them being killed. That's something that you should be looking into before making such decisions. So I understand that there's rioting in cities. I've been through it myself, so I know it pretty well. I understand that the Rodney King thing can look and be very scary, and the best thing to do when something like that happens, you just stay put. You stay home. You have your weapon to defend yourself. You stay put, and your chances of not getting hurt increase dramatically. So when there's rioting, when there's looting, you just stay put, and that's the best thing you can do. It's not going to be lasting forever. Just making such a drastic decision as moving away from everything because of the concern you have of rioting in the cities, let me tell you, because I went through that, it's not what you should be doing. At least what I pretend with this video is that whatever choice you make it for the right choices. Okay, whatever decision you end up making, know that you're making it for the right reasons. If you decide to have a healthier lifestyle, if you're just retiring and you plan on moving to some place where you'll have a neighbor you know and trust, and you're taking the risk of, if crime gets out of control, you're accepting this risk of being a potential victim, but you much rather make that move because you are counting on a healthier lifestyle. You'd like to have your own gardening stuff, your own make your own food and such. At least make an informed decision. Okay, folks, that's basically what I wanted to do with this video. And if you're in the city, don't be so concerned about some of the stuff you read online that cities will go up in flames if the economy collapses. It's more of a fear-mongering thing than an actual fact based on historic events, on what has happened before in other places. So don't fall for that either. So just that, make informed decisions, gather as much information as you can, and prepare as well as possible. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Remember to subscribe, and see you on our next video. Take care.